All right. So today we have Maria to talk about settings and her work with settings. And if there's a little bit of overlap with time, we might talk about some navigation stuff. But I think right now we'll focus mainly on settings. So previously, so I put on two points in the agenda around like some of the stuff that other designers mentioned that you worked on, such as standardizing settings. There's like an issue that you created a while ago about, alignment of buttons and things like that. And then I'd love to talk a little bit more if we have time about the landing pages for the left nav as well. So yeah, I think let's kick off with the standard questions so far about, what kind of challenges have you had in the past working with settings within your group context?
So far, I actually have not introduced anything in settings for the configure stage. There have been conversations of adding functionality to it. I try to push back in most of the times. So maybe I should start from how I view the current settings.
Oh, sure.
Cool. So I haven't done any work on them. I've seen that they are very, very content heavy. I know that the UX research has proved that users cannot find functionality in settings, and they have required a search. And I think it shouldn't be exactly like that. So the way I view settings is that we have added like everything there so that we can have a split between admin, like project maintainer and developer. And we can easily handle that. But in general, I prefer the UX of settings being close to the thing that you do the settings for. So we've had conversations. I think Nadia S also opened an issue for settings for the configure and monitor stage to move settings to the menu. And there was a conversation about moving all the settings to the navigation menu that it is pertaining to. So far, I have been pushing back on adding anything to settings because I think it's not discoverable. And that's my main motivation, trying to add functionality close to where the features are.
So by pushing back on adding things to settings, how have you allowed for like whatever settings or configuration of like the feature that you've been working on? Like how have you gotten around not using settings?
So usually the proposal is, let's add a setting to enable or disable this feature. In the latest case, I'm working on the Terraform state. So there was a proposal to add something, I think, in the settings for that. And I actually proposed to have a menu item only if we have a Terraform state within a project. So remove the enable, disable from the user and just automate whether they can see the menu for this specific functionality. In other cases, there is a Kubernetes agent. So it's still being worked on. There was a conversation about enabling the agent and some of its features from the settings, but we're not there yet. But I do think we'll need to add settings for the agent in the end.
Cool. And silly question on my side. Like you said that the way you worked around it was thinking about only showing the menu item if it's available. But how is it available to begin with? Like where's...
This is it's a, well, not a unique case, but it's one of the cases where you create a project. It might be an application project, it might be an infrastructure project. So the functionality of projects is there already. If it's a Terraform, if it's an infrastructure project and you write Terraform code, then the state file is automatically produced. So this is why I don't think there is something to enable or disable, because you might have a different type of project and you don't care about Terraform at all. So we automatically detect the existence of a type of file in your project, and this is when we show the menu.
I see. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you for clarifying that.
Happy to answer any more questions you have to my ability.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go into talking about how you, like, what sparked you creating the epic around like standardizing settings. Like,
there was an issue from Nadia S that the button is on the wrong place. So I thought we have not started converting our UI towards pajamas guidelines. And this was my main motivation to start following the guidelines on the UI and make these simple changes like moving the button to the right across settings.
Cool. And then going through and creating all these issues and kind of like looking at the UI. Right now, we kind of lack guidelines in pajamas around how to do settings. To you, what's a good example of settings and layout, either in GitLab or outside of GitLab? Is there anything that resonates with you as like, oh, yes, all our settings should just look like this across the board?
Good question. I think about operating system settings. In general, they're all in one place, so it's different to what I'm describing. However, you are a single user using a single operating system, so you're probably interested in audio settings, scanner. So in this case, I think it makes sense, and it's a good example of accumulating settings in one place. In our case, that we have multiple personas, and I'm trying to think of a software that has multiple personas similarly to ours. I can't think of anything as complex as GitLab, to be honest, besides the tool I was working on in my previous company. But yeah, even for that tool, and I was a designer, so I'm quite biased, the settings of a piece of functionality were in that screen. So you could navigate to settings for the specific things pretty easily from the home page, for example, the home menu.
Right. And would that take you to a new page itself, or was that like in place?
It was in place. It was like a tab. So you would have the functionality across tabs, and then the final tab would also always be settings or configuration.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry, I can't think of more concrete examples.
If you think of, if anything pops up, just like ping me on Slack, then there's no need to put you on the spot, kind of like a game show or something like that. So we can, take that conversation asynchronously if it pops into your mind.
Okay, we'll do some searching.
Yeah, cool. And then I guess we have a bit of time. So I want to talk to you a little bit about one of the proposal issues that you've drafted about 3 months ago around introducing a top-level navigation menu. So this is outside settings, is now into like kind of navigation. Tell me what sparked this, and like what's like where do you think things are going with it?
I hope things will go somewhere with it. I hope we adopt the proposal. What sparked my interest is that we have such a complex tool and it's very hard to find functionality. You would have to go through all the navigation items and look within each one, or go to the docs and get lost into how to do things. So I thought dashboards or landing pages in whatever form they have is a good way to advertise functionality and features. So And also it's a good way to describe what's already set up for you. So it's, I view them as a good summary of what's in your system. Also a good place to link different pieces of functionality. So cross-stage opportunities for user flows that need to move across stages. And also, I think the main thing that sparked this idea was that our stage has low adoption. From user interviews, we found out that people who use GitLab did not even know our features in the operations side and Kubernetes side. So I thought if there was an infrastructure dashboard, first of all, even if you have added clusters to your GitLab environment, you can see them under project, you can see them under group, but you cannot really see information about them. So a cluster is where probably developers deploy their applications.
Okay.
So we have two sides in GitLab, the application and the infrastructure. And there's no linking between these two, besides in the YAML file. You have to dig deeper to see which application is running on which piece of infrastructure. So I thought it would be a very good opportunity if we introduced at some point a dashboard to make the link between the development side and the infrastructure side of things. So that sparked the idea. And then I went through all the navigation and I saw that in some cases we have a landing page, for example, issues that I see in the proposal. And then it's the same as the first menu item, which makes the first menu item redundant.
Right.
Then there are existing dashboards that could serve as a landing page to summarize what's already in this menu. And I thought we would benefit from this kind of summary of your system because it's really hard, I think, to have a total view and a high-level view of your GitLab instance.
And particularly to your group, like you said that it would help expose potentially the containers of Kubernetes and all these other features. Which menu item would that be that you're talking about that would show up in?
Good question. So there is a piece of work, which is to change the navigation for operations and introduce a new item called infrastructure. We were going to develop that in 13.5, but the UX research team felt that we need more research to make this change.
Okay.
But that would be the place to surface. Otherwise, it would be operations, but operations is a mix of both configuration and monitoring. So it's, but then alerts could be very nicely integrated to the components of infrastructure, for example, if it was a common dashboard.
So infrastructure would be in the same level as operations, or would it replace operations?
It would be on the same level, and two items from the current operations will move to infrastructure, serverless and Kubernetes.
Gotcha. Thank you for helping me understand that a little bit better.
I can link the issue as well.
Perfect. So just some background knowledge on what's going on so far is that, and now that settings and navigation improvements are part of the UX OKRs for this quarter. So we're looking at different ways to get other groups involved or kind of tackling key problems first. That earlier comment that you made earlier about consolidating settings into one place and having search kind of be the driver towards settings is one of the priorities, is like a way to search or find settings. So that's on the list. I've been looking at the left nav. There's like UX research ongoing right now, kind of evaluating the current left nav, but also thinking about what should go in there. This idea of having a landing page is interesting. As I really like how you explained it, like showing like cross stage pieces. In a previous company I worked for, we kind of did something like that to help exposure or discovery of new features, or analytics was a huge one, to like sprinkle throughout the whole application. So that's really exciting. So I'll probably reach out to you probably in the future sometimes for some feedback on left nav designs or other navigation things. But yeah, I just wanted to give you a heads up on that one.
Okay, cool. That would be great.
Yeah.
If we have extra time, would you like to go through the settings a bit and see which settings fall under configure, or at least in my understanding? Or is that an exercise you're not currently doing?
If you have thoughts on it, I'm happy to like hear what you have to think.
I have actually arrived at a concrete thought, but let me share my screen. I'll try to be fast. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. So you said the first would be to introduce search, the MVC through settings.
Yeah, search is one of the priorities, whether it's first or last, or some time in the quarter we'll tackle it, us or the search team.
But settings will remain here because I know there is a security compliance has already moved, I guess, their settings under configuration here. So I'm not going to go through all settings, but one of the things I have observed is that the configure related settings are might not be just under operations. So for example, if you want to create a cluster on AWS or Google, at the moment you have to have your integration set up, I believe, for them. I can see them here. It's not here. Well, in my GDK, in order to create a cluster, I had to go to integrations and add my credentials here, but I don't see it now. Okay, and then in this view, all the settings are related to the monitoring side of the ops. So there's nothing here related actually to us. And then there is a auto DevOps setting. So this is relevant to the configure stage. So auto DevOps allows you to, well, automatically deploy to a cluster. It takes care, I think, of if there is a cluster, you can automate your CI/CD pipelines. So I feel that auto DevOps, for example, configuration is completely outside the flow of auto DevOps. So when you create a project, I think there is a setting to turn on auto DevOps. I haven't gone through this flow for a long time, but back then I thought that auto DevOps, you have to leave your flow, come to settings, enable, then go back to where you were. And then there is a piece of configuration within the cluster for auto DevOps, so it's a pretty broken flow. Yeah, so basically our settings are kind of scattered, I would say. So my idea would be maybe a better grouping of settings here, or a more clarity. So on top of introducing search, an information architecture that assists with the jobs. CI/CD is clear, I guess, for auto DevOps, but maybe you don't know that you're going to find them there.
When you say assist with the jobs, are you saying potentially change the labels to like set up clusters or set up like auto DevOps, or do you think it's more like just like nouns, like this is CI/CD, or are you talking more about action workflows as the menu items?
I'm not referring specifically to actions, but a bit more clarity, at least in the title. So for example, variables, I don't know if they're only used within the CI/CD. Maybe they are, but they are the secret management. And I think they're really important for users. So maybe I would split them from CI/CD and add a secrets management, which is more of an action rather than, or just secrets and variables. I think each of these settings contains a lot of subsettings.
Yes.
So maybe regrouping them and breaking some of them out, even though it's going to create a larger menu for settings, might help discoverability.
I like that kind of thought, because sometimes as designers, you want to simplify and consolidate things to make things appear simpler, but sometimes having a list of things might be the easier way to go around things. So that's really an interesting insight.
And another thing, until we are able to move the settings in their respective places, it would maybe be nice to have, there's probably linking, but instead of you navigating to settings, maybe it would be nice to use models and surface within your flow the settings. I don't know, models, drawer, something that doesn't make you leave your flow to go to settings and come back to your flow. But that's, I think, very out there idea.
Yeah, it's not way out there. If you want, I can share you my screen, because we are, one of the suggested ideas was to introduce, so you can see my Figma screen. Yeah, so I kind of had the same idea as you of like pulling out all the things into like a giant list on the side, potentially, so they're not like encapsulated in there. Whether we go with direct to a search at the top or an intermediate step, that's to be determined. But the idea here is probably inspired by some of the stuff that I've watched in Nadia's video talking about Monitor, where they have like this little settings button and it takes you to like settings, and there's no clear way to navigate back. What I was thinking is that by consolidating into like pajamas components, you almost have like modules of settings that you can then pull up in a drawer or whatever that may be. That would be this specific area's settings. And I think a drawer might be more flexible in the length of the page, because some stuff like what you just showed with the auto DevOps, it was like 2 radio buttons and like a checkbox. But there could be other things where it's like a long page. So it's like I've seen some of these setting pages where like they are definitely pages, and using something like a drawer might be helpful to surf it. Like maybe if it's too long, there's a link to say like view all your settings here, or maybe like the most commonly, the ones you would change often might come up in here, and the rules around that configuration is like to be determined. But that's kind of like the rough idea, that each group could like configure which settings that they want to pull it through. How this all works
this idea.
Is, I have no idea, but yeah. So I think this is like still very early days. I just mocked this up to like have something tangible to talk through. But yeah, so this idea of in context settings definitely helps with something complex like GitLab, where if we send you to settings all the time, it's like finding a needle in a haystack.
That's a great, yeah, I love this idea. So I'm all for it.
Cool. So we're at time right now. So thank you very much for your time. And yeah, I'll ping you in the future as we get more updates on the things we do. And yeah, it's been really insightful. And Thanks once again.
I hope so. I'm not sure it was very helpful, but yeah, I would really like to be involved in the process.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah.
wish you a lovely night.
Yes.
Thank you
And
for
have a great
thinking.
day. Bye.